Products meant for brick-and-mortar stores are designed for shelf presence, often with oversized packs and eye-catching features that aren't necessary for online retail. Designing e-com packaging that will stand up in fast-moving warehouse environment is completely different. How do designers respond to these new challenges? Packaging design should seduce, inform, and even save the planet. I'm Hernán Braberman, and this is BRANDERMAN, the podcast where I talk with experts to uncover what it actually takes to make a positive impact on consumers, the market, and society. Warning: keep this podcast out of the reach of close-minded marketers and designers. Before the interview, let me introduce my design agency.
Brands with purpose. Human, agile, honest brands that leave no one indifferent. Tridimage creates and revitalizes brands to imagine and shape the future. Tridimage, the branding and packaging design agency for bold brands.
Today I had the pleasure to speak with Brent Lindberg, Head of Curiosity at Fuseneo, a packaging innovation development and prototyping firm that crosses material and process boundaries to unlock solutions that help brands succeed online and on-shelf. Brent has directed packaging design projects for Google, Disney, Starbucks, and Amazon, to name but a few. In this episode, we discuss the biggest design differences between designing retail and e-com packaging. He also describes the 4 P's of packaging design, shares best practices for designing e-commerce packaging, and tells me why he believes designers should be material and process agnostic. Today, with me, Brent Lindberg. Brent, each of us is a container of ideas, projects, and dreams. However, we can't read the label when we are inside the jar. What do you think your label says, or what would you like it to say?
The jar itself would probably be an interesting shape, but the label would probably be a warning label or a series of warning labels. Maybe contents may be spicy. I enjoy disruption, and not just for the sake of disruption, but I enjoy finding limits and pushing on brands and pushing on manufacturing. Yeah, I like disruption.
Building a brand is like a journey. It starts with defining where we are and asking ourselves where we want to go. What was the path that led you from studying design, then working as an in-house designer at a large manufacturer, to now leading Fuseneo?
I can trace most of my career back to a couple of really key opportunities and taking a lot of initiative. I had this incredible opportunity to be hired at 17 years old, working full-time for a company that was manufacturing. I was working for large global brands doing bottle design, and they said, hey, come lead design for us and we'll pay for your college. And it was just this incredible opportunity that I said, heck yes. But it also meant working, 50 to 70 hours a week and going to 2 schools and not really having a whole lot of social. That's really formative, just being in this manufacturing environment, understanding commercialization piece of it, and having all these brands come in with these really cool designs, maybe that we can't make that or you can't afford that. It provided this context on the other side of the design world, having to bring things to life. Yeah, after doing that for almost a decade, I was asked to start a design firm by a large global brand. And again, I said, yeah, let's do it. And so that's been almost 15 years now. Yeah, it's been a long road, but some really killer opportunities.
If you could travel back in time and give some advice to that rookie Brent, what would it be?
Oh man, don't be such an idiot would be one place. No, I think I have zero regrets about really seizing opportunity and working hard for whatever opportunity that you're given. So I think it would just be encouragement in times where I was really frustrated, in times where I was just felt defeated or dejected, especially, even though we've had an incredible run as Fuseneo and it's been amazing,
What does being head of curiosity at Fuseneo mean to you?
I am not huge on just the typical kind of titles and hierarchy and stuff. And so, I tell our team, hey, give yourself a title that's going to allow you to do your job well. And, if that means that you think somebody's going to look down on you because you have a junior designer title, then I don't care, change your title. So that means absolutely nothing to me. So head of curiosity, we have a number of family values. We call them the Fuseneo family values, and they are really principles that the team is built around that we look for. And optimistic curiosity is one of them. The kind of subline to that is question with wonder and believe in better. As designers, if we don't believe that something can be improved, if we don't believe that things can be made better, then we shouldn't be in design. And so this optimistic curiosity is going into every situation, looking at every product with a level of optimism, like, hey, we can do something cool here. Let's figure this out, and challenging that. So yeah, I think curiosity is an incredible attribute.
Yeah. Your team is comprised of industrial designers, graphic designers, package engineers. What, in your opinion, sets apart a great package designer from a good one?
I have to refer back and defer to my experience on the manufacturing side. I spent near a decade in blow molding. That experience, first of all, it was incredible. They gave me the runway that was just amazing. And if I wanted to push on design, if I really wanted to push the envelope and try something challenging, the comment that came back to me was, okay, but you're going to go into the plant. You're going to go down on the machine and help run it. And, there were times that I went down there and I just ate my lunch, right? I would stand at the machine. I was like, oh, that's why you said don't do this. Okay, I should have listened. You're right. But there were also times where we did it and they were like, oh, well, that actually turned out. And I was like, yeah, cool. It was this very hands-on understanding of how to make something and how to push the envelope on things. So I think good packaging design, it's aesthetic, it's got the customer in mind, it does some cool things, it portrays the brand, but really great packaging design understands the needs of the brand, it understands the commercialization needs. And we have these 4 Ps that we look at, and I'm not going to dig into it too deep, but basically, we're looking at the whole supply chain of something. How is it made? How is the packaging made? How is it packed out? How is it shipped? How is it retailed? How is it used? Ultimately, how is it recycled? And so good packaging really understands the entire supply chain, and it doesn't just try and look good on shelf.
Let's dive deep into that 4 Ps.
Yeah. Produce, protect, present, perform. Produce is really all about that commercialization, right? Like, how is the packaging made? How is the product maybe made? And how does it interface with the packaging? How is it assembled and put together? The protect is really all about distribution. So how is it packed out and palletized and moved around and handled throughout that supply chain? Present is really how does it come to life on shelf, and even where does it live on shelf, and its dimensional considerations, or what is it next to those typical things that we might think about as designers going in to do a store audit. And then lastly, the perform piece is really all about the consumer interaction, whether it's showing up on doorstep or it's in a store environment, and all the way out to recyclability. So we just kind of break it up into these 4 sections, and we dive deep into each section and try and understand the impact of each of these areas on packaging. But I'm a very simple thinker. I'm not that complicated. And so I think in very linear process. So like if you looked at that, it's really from start of life to end of life. And it's this very linear flow. And are we thinking about everything along the way? And yes, it has forks and paths, right? Something may live in retail and e-commerce. It may be direct to consumer. It may go through other supply. Like there's a lot of complexity to that, but just really teaching our team to think in this kind of linear, holistic process.
I heard you define your agency as being material and process agnostics. Why do you believe that?
So some of that stems from working on the manufacturing side. If somebody came to us, and I've literally had this happen, we had a company that makes beef sticks come to us and say, hey, what should we do with our new product? And the answer was put it in a bottle, because we made bottles. There was selfish intent there. Now, we wanted to find the right thing for them, and that was great. But at the end of the day, we only made bottles. And so we could do some really killer things. And we came up with some great designs, but it was very narrow-minded. It was selfish intent. Not only should you put it in a bottle, but you should put it in a bottle that runs on that machine that I have sitting right there with capacity on it, right? because as a manufacturer, we are looking to fill capacity on machines and design stuff that we can run. We can't run everything. But when a brand really needs to understand what is the right thing for me, I think they need to be looking across materials and across processes. And sometimes materials and processes come together. So being able to look at all of the different available materials, even not typical packaging materials, or being able to look at processes that may be non-conventional or difficult, I really think that ability to look across that whole landscape is helping a brand unselfishly. Like it's helping them explore every opportunity and also give them ownership and equity over this design.
Brent, what are some of the biggest design differences you find between retail and e-com packaging?
It's been an interesting journey that we've been on. It's been, almost 6 years now that we have been like Amazon's design partner, and we've been doing this whole e-com thing and actually defining what is e-commerce packaging mean globally. And it has taught me a ton. But the difference is in the way that goods are handled, they're displayed, they're sold. It is completely different. We think of this kind of first moment of truth and this whole hierarchy of packaging that has been around forever. There's these rules that come into play with how we think about retail packaging. Well, when that's not how you shop it and your interaction with it is very different, and you don't have things like theft prevention that you would have in retail, and you don't have to display the product, you don't have to be obnoxious and large and stand out on shelf, you just don't have any of those things. But what you do have is a very rigorous supply chain that is unprotected and requires some level of durability. They are, in some cases, like diametrically opposed to each other. Bigger is better in retail, smaller is better in e-commerce, bolder is better. They're almost polar opposites.
Where do you draw the line between design and engineering while designing e-com packaging?
I don't believe there should be a line. Every design that we do is vet and validated with what we call line of sight to manufacturability, right? We want to understand the impact that this is going to have on all of these 4 Ps. And those 4 Ps are very much aesthetic. They're very much, engineered. There's all of those components are there. So I think that it should be this incredible mashup of those two.
What is the role of consumer experience in the age of e-commerce? Is it all about memorable unboxing?
Oh, consumer experience. This is something that I think sometimes often overplayed or misunderstood. Customer experience can be part of this unboxing, and sometimes that unboxing is really important. I like to give this example about ant traps. These little ant traps that you set out to kill ants, and they're maybe a few dollars from the store. If you bought them online, you don't expect this like elegant unboxing experience that feels like Apple packaging, and the brand can't afford it. It doesn't make sense. What you expect is something that's going to hold them. It's clear to communicate. It's easy to open. It does a couple of things. But this whole unboxing experience, it's very much a graduated scale. There's times where it really is important. Your first engagement with a brand, a high value product, or a refillable product that you're buying, there's plenty of times where that experience comes into play. And there's also some really cool things that can be done in an experience that aren't crazy and they aren't expensive and they're not over the top. But I think the experience needs to be appropriate to the concept. I tend to look at experience a lot more broadly. People think of this Apple unboxing. It feels premium. It's elegant. The finishes are amazing. Like that's one piece, but the other piece of it could just be, it's simple. Like it's minimal, it's recyclable, it holds it stands up in my fridge, or it fits in my cup holder, or whatever it is like that. It doesn't have a whole bunch of packing peanuts in it, those little styrofoam bits that get all over the place. All of that can be experienced.
You made me remember about that term wrap rage, the frustration an end user feels when opening packaging. How can we avoid that?
This whole concept of frustration-free packaging that was really coined by Amazon and Jeff Bezos years ago, this idea of wrap rage comes from excessive packaging. It comes from difficult to open packaging. It comes from items like toys being held in with difficult to open things and spending 20 minutes unbuckling and unclipping and snipping all these little things to get the toy out of the package. It comes from like heat-sealed blister packs and clamshells that you need a chainsaw to open up. And that's wrap rage, right? It may be excessive packaging. It may be difficult to open packaging. It may be easy to open, but difficult to get the product out. So yeah, that idea of wrap rage is something that stems from retail. It stems from these clamshell things that are difficult to steal from. They're theft prevention, right? Or these toy packages that are open so you can see it and touch it and play with it, but you can't get it out and it doesn't fall out. So there's a lot of this that was really built from the retail experience that we can fix in e-commerce.
Prep-free, SIOC, FFP. Can you please walk us through the different Amazon packaging programs?
The terms prep-free, SIOC, or SIOC, we say SIOC, or FFP, we've actually kind of morphed it a touch. And now all of those fit under the frustration-free packaging programs, which is a larger umbrella of packaging guidelines and advice and counsel to brands. It's now 3 tiers. So tier 3 is prep-free, tier 2 is SIOC, and tier 1 is FFP. This prep-free really refers to liquids and fragiles and actually some other things in e-commerce that when shipped are coming open, they're coming out, they're leaking, they're dispensing. And so prep is this process by which Amazon adds a bag or a piece of tape or some bubble wrap around your product to try and help it survive the rest of the journey. So prep free means that you've gone through a test, and an ISTA, an ISTA test that does a number of drops. And in a prep free test, we put that item into an overbox with some other dummy objects, and we drop it and we put it on a vibration table and we do some, that testing. If it comes out at the end and there's no leakage, things haven't come apart, nothing's come out, then we certify it as prep free, meaning the vendor doesn't have to now pay prep charges, which can be expensive. Amazon putting that bag or tape on it. So that's prep free. It's probably the most difficult to understand. Moving into tier 2 and tier 1, which are SIOC and FFP, those 2 tiers are both designed to certify packaging as able to ship in its own packaging, so not require anything extra from Amazon. Both of those are SIOC, and I'm using air quotes that you can't see here. Both of those are shipped in their own container packaging. The distinction for FFP is that it's held to a little bit higher standard. It's a little more optimized in size. It uses all curbside recyclable components. But the idea for both of those tiers is that they can arrive to Amazon and then just get a shipping label right on that box and it goes out. There's no box of Amazon that's needed. There's nothing extra protection-wise. There are a lot of products that use styrofoam or they use non-recyclable components, or maybe they're a little excessively large, or brands that are using their stuff from retail and they can't maybe necessarily easily go redesign it. And so there's this tier that allows for that. We ultimately, trying to drive brands towards FFP, this optimized, more recyclable tier. But both of those, they use the same test method where instead of putting it in a box and testing it, we test it in the packaging that it shows up.
Brent, how does it feel when you approve those tests?
It's great. I mean, I love seeing brands put their packaging to the test and improve it and optimize it, especially going to FFP or a brand who says, hey, you know what? We are willing to disrupt and let's go see how small or how different or what else we can do for e-commerce. That's a lot of fun to see a brand push themselves.
When we design for e-commerce, packaging becomes the storefront of the brand, the stage that presents the product to the consumer. We are experiencing the rise of direct-to-consumer brands. In your YouTube channel, you have dissected literally dozens of D2C packages. What are your best tips for creating memorable D2C packs?
D2C is a different space, right? You don't have a lot of the same guardrails and restrictions that you would have if you're shipping instead of Amazon shipping it, or you're selling it instead of a major retailer selling it. You don't have to really abide by their rules. You can be a little more disruptive. And there are some things that you can do that cross over. But when a brand really owns its personality and they come to life, they communicate the values of the brand, they're very really vocal about sustainability of the packaging and what to do with it. They help you through this journey of how do I return this, right? That return process is different when you're D2C versus when you are in a retail or Amazon fulfillment environment. I think just the embracing of the brand and the optimized experience, because you had no other rules that you had to abide by other than it has to be shippable. There's some cool D2C brands that really take advantage of that, but I think there's a lot that could take a lot more advantage of that.
What do you see as the biggest challenge for designers working in the e-com space?
Some of the biggest challenges are validating what does work, what doesn't work, understanding all of the different types of supply chains, right? There are so many different ways that goods are shipped. And there are so many different mixed model retail environments where you click and collect or ship from store, or it's really convoluted. And then you start adding in all of these regulatory things around shipping batteries or liquids. You've just added a whole nother layer of complexity that you didn't have inside of just typical retail design. And then that validation, really that durability component. And then beyond that, helping brands understand this omni-channel thing. And what I mean by that is their brand and their products are coming to life in both retail, traditional retail stores, and e-commerce, like online stores. And do they differentiate packaging? Is it all the same? Omnichannel being like the same thing I sell in the store is what it sells online. Where do I multiply my SKUs and differentiate stuff? Where do I keep them the same? It certainly adds a lot of unknowns and a lot of questions that have to get answered.
Let's talk about sustainability. If you walk down any street on garbage day, it's easy to see bins overflowing with boxes from Amazon, Walmart, and others. How can we solve online shopping waste problem?
Yeah, sustainability is an incredibly complicated beast because it's easy to look at the amount of material that we put in recycling bins or don't and say that that's the sustainability issue. We tend to look at it a lot broader than that, right? Maybe there's a box and maybe there is a delivery driver that drove it to our house and maybe they delivered it in 3 boxes. And we could say, oh man, that's so wasteful. There's all of this fuel, these trucks driving around and stuff. But when we start looking at it and saying, okay, these 3 items, we may have had to get in our own car and drive 20 minutes to the other side of town to go to the store. And if that store didn't have it, we'd drive to the next store and we would buy it and we'd put it in a bag and we'd haul it out to our car and we'd drive back home. At the end of the day, the Amazon or Walmart or whoever put it in a box and they put it on a truck and that truck drove from our neighbor's house to our house. And then, there's a shared journey from wherever the destination or the original destination was out to our neighbor's house, but it's a shared delivery. There's actually some pretty compelling research that's been done around that overall sustainability story, but I digress. Going back to your question about how do we minimize the amount of material, because I still believe that is a valid goal and a valiant effort. That's a lot of what we've been doing with Amazon is trying to encourage brands to design more optimized packaging, design packaging that's recyclable, design packaging that's smaller and more fit to product. If we're doing that, then Amazon or Walmart, whoever has to put less boxes on stuff, or they're putting smaller boxes on them and there's more that are fitting in a truck, there's less material being used. Encouraging brands to really optimize their packaging is going to do a lot of that.
So you are meaning that size really matters?
Size matters. That's correct.
Brent, what is the biggest design challenge you have faced so far and how did you overcome it?
Everybody has their own perception of what packaging is. And it's funny, you could probably say this, but when people ask, oh, what do you do? Packaging design. Oh, okay. So you put labels on, like, no, I mean, yes, but no, and so for us, packaging, it could be a bottle. And that's where I came from. That's great. We call it the CPG world, the consumables world, right? So it's a bottle or it's pouches or all these types of consumable goods. Then you move into spaces where you have durable goods and electronics packaging and toys and all these other things. But then we move out into like industrial packaging. How are we moving heavy and bulky goods like furniture? And how are we moving industrial goods like air conditioners? And then even beyond that, how are we creating reusable packaging systems like food delivery methods or exchangeable packaging systems? Or how are we helping helping to move servers around the world? How are we creating automated platforms? So for us, packaging actually it's really, really big in terms of its scope. Honestly, some of the hardest things that we have to do is design a bottle that's being reproduced billions of times a year because of just the scale of operations. If you design a 20-ounce bottle of carbonated soft drink, and you've got to consider everything downstream of that, right? The vending machines, the racks, the trucks that it goes in. So I think these two things on the ends of the spectrum, these high volume things, but anything that has low margin and high volume is going to be particularly challenging.
I saw your Disney project for the dolls that was launched on last Earth Day.
That is a case where we had this really exciting opportunity to disrupt. And the toy industry has this held belief that I have to see what I buy, I have to touch what I buy. In retail, that's what consumers are used to. With e-commerce, you don't. You see it, you see several pictures of it. You actually have a better picture of what it is outside of the box and its size and scale and how it moves and what it does than you do in a retail environment where you can't take it out of the box. We have the opportunity to disrupt in an e-commerce space. The brief for that project was really about eliminating plastic, but at the end of the day, we were having to solve for other consumer perception challenges as well. Optimizing that doll packaging, allowing it to be easy to get out, not using any plastic to hold it in. So getting creative on the way that we held accessories and things like that. And also holding the doll in. For us, there was a piece of this that was about operational efficiency. How do we get the doll in there without a whole bunch of twist ties, not just because we don't want the customer to have to open them, but because we don't want the plant to have to pack them. Like thinking of being that person who sits there and puts those little twist ties on every day,
No.
That does not sound fun. And so how do we make it easier for the person in the factory to load this into packaging? We like to think all the way back to that level. How do we make their job easier? It was a big challenge trying to get a brand to shift their perspective that I don't have to see everything that I buy.
What is the design tactic that has worked for you time and time again? Your secret weapon?
Secret weapon. It's very unconventional. It's really about treating the brand as a collection of people. We think of a brand and we think of it as its own, living, breathing entity, and it's got its own persona and it's got its own attributes. When we see a brand, we see it as a collection of people that have car payments and mortgages and kids in college and family disputes. And we see it as this collection of people. We are working together to propel that brand and to lift that brand and set that brand up for success. We do that through making individuals within the brand successful. And so one of the things that we do when we go into a project is, hey, how do we make you look good? How do we help you be successful in this? Because if we can do that up the chain of people within a brand, ultimately they want the brand to be successful. But if we're asking them to take on too much risk, or if we're asking them to do something that is counterproductive to their own objectives, hey, your objective was to save cost and we're proposing this thing that's more expensive. We are putting ourselves in a difficult position and them for success. And so, it's very unconventional. We call it selfless service. Like, how do we go and make people look like rock stars within brands?
That sounds great. Brent, do you also see dead people?
I see dead people. Good one.
What is the worst design crime you have ever seen or committed?
Oh man, I've made so many dumb mistakes over the years. There's one that still sticks with me, and it pisses me off because it is still in the market. And this goes back early in my career. I was young. I was maybe 18 years old, and we had a client come in for a brand, and it was like a cooking oil product. And the head of the brand came in and brought a couple of their right-hand people with them. And they were in my office and we were going through some concepts and some designs. The first mistake I made was showing stuff that I didn't like, that I knew they would like, but I didn't like. And of course, a brand is always going to pick that. Don't show stuff that you're not excited about. We want to give brand stuff that we are really excited about. And so I showed a number of concepts, some of which I thought were really cool, some of which I was not excited about. They picked, of course, one of the ones I was not excited about. But then in the meeting, I just didn't have the backbone. It goes back to another one of our values, confident humility. I didn't have that confidence to really stand up for the design when one of these supporting people in the company was like, what would be really cool on that bottle is some drops like some little embossed drops on the top of that bottle. And I was like, and the person that was in charge of the brand was like, well, okay, if that's what you want, we'll put drops on the bottle. And I had to put drops on that bottle. And I didn't have the confidence to stand up to them and say, that's a really horrible idea. You were basically like making it look like it's dripped all over the bottle. And, when you poured it, it didn't belong there. It was ugly. I had to put it on there. And that bottle still exists today, and it irritates me.
Brent, what changes do you think we will see in the coming years in the world of e-com packaging?
There has been a lot of apprehension when it comes to e-commerce packaging, especially from large brands. Over the years, e-commerce has grown to be single-digit percentages of these brands. Throughout the last just 2 years, in many cases, that's moved into double-digit percentages of sales for these brands. And so now all of a sudden, brands are really having to pay attention because they were willing to lose money for a single-digit percentage of their goods sold. Now, when you're moving into double-digit percentages, 13, 15 plus percent, that's really hard to lose money on. We're going to see, one, a lot of brands get a lot more intentional about package for e-commerce and products for e-commerce. Some cases, I think you're also going to see a lot more product move towards e-commerce ready in retail environments. Because of this kind of hybrid model, I think you're going to see more retail environments that become more like distribution centers as well. And so we actually see e-commerce coming back downstream into main retail in the not too distant future.
Super interesting. If you could change just one thing within the branding and packaging design industry, what would it be?
I would... probably skewed because of my background and what we really are as a firm, but I would tell design firms that just want to draw pretty things to not do structural packaging. I've seen way too many projects come from great design firms that know branding all day long, and they even potentially know product design, but they've sold a brand on something that can't be made and can't be done. I am a passionate protector of the brand and the people in the brand. And so when they get burned, I get mad. Even if that's by my own industry, I get really upset when a brand is misled or sold something that can't be made or just not served well. As designers, we have this reputation and there's this stigma that everything needs to be sexy and everything needs to win awards and everything needs to be crazy. And so we are serving selfish intentions if that's what we're approaching brands with. So that was my little soapbox.
What is your next adventure?
Oh, man, there are a number of adventures all the time. I'm a big adventurer. We've always been pretty global. I'm learning a ton as we spread more into EU and into Asia and to those two markets and engage with more brands, engage in different environments. I mean, the Asian market is so different. Even the EU market is so different. And we've been working in it for years, but we've been approached a lot more and we're a lot more intentional now about serving in those areas. And that's, to me, an adventure. We are learning a ton and having a lot of fun along the way.
Thanks so much, Brent. The hallmark of innovation is surprise. Without surprise, there is no interest, and without interest, there is no value. Thanks for surprising us.
That's my pleasure. That's what I do.
I hope you have enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. You can check the episode notes for all the relevant links. I also invite you to follow me on Instagram and on my website, branderman.design. Follow the podcast in your favorite app so you don't miss the next episode of Branderman, the podcast where we try to uncover how to make a positive impact on consumers, the market and society through package design.